And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Road Runners Unfiltered. It's your host, Darian Starlin. And today I am joined by Mr. UTSA Rivals himself, Javi Cardenas. How's it going? Oh my gosh. I have, yes, I have my feed up as well. So sorry if you guys heard that double take. But how's it going, Javi?
It's going great. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, listen, I think there's a lot. We've talked on this podcast a lot about recruiting, what needs to be done, what holes and what gaps that we need to fill. Um, but before we jump into all of that, I know like you report on a lot of that stuff. But before we jump into that, could you give folks who may not have seen some of your content and may not seen, some of what you do? Can you give folks a sort of overview of what you cover, how you cover it, and where we can find you?
Yeah, so you guys can always find our work over at UTSA Rivals. Some variation of that handle all over social media, Twitter X, primarily is where you see most of our content. But we also have a great group of photographers that handle the photo side over on Instagram as well. So, but yeah, we cover not just myself. Obviously, I have honestly one of the best team. Stephen Whitaker, who is really the beat writer for the teams. Really, he does football, baseball, basketball. Then we have a couple recruiting writers. That's Brandon Holland and Julio Gonzalez. Julio's recently been with us, but they handle more of the recruiting side. They've been a great asset to the website. They're really deep in there. Brandon on the San Antonio side, and then Julio kind of all over the state and just in general. And then we have a fantastic group of photographers that have been with the site for a long time. Burke Frey, Chase Otero, all those
I've
guys, man.
met Bert.
Alonso Ramirez. Yeah, he's been around for a long time. I'm sure.
Yeah,
He's I think even before me. I think he was helping Mike Raven out
yeah.
before I even started with the site. So yeah, and I'm just kind of I just kind of help them. I try to facilitate their job as a publisher.
Gotcha. And are you sort of the head of the site now? I know Mike was doing it for a while. I remember Mike doing some stories with Mike back in my playing
Yeah.
days. Are you sort of the new Mike? Or I wouldn't say the new
Um,
Mike since you've been there for about a decade now, but have you kind of somewhat
Yeah, no, there's no replacing Mike Craven, that's for sure. He's an expert at what he does.
uh,
Yeah, so I'm the publisher. I am the owner of the site.
oh nice.
I've been doing it, like you mentioned, for close to 10 years, probably 7 years as the publisher owner.
Yeah,
That title kind of I'm a big on titles, right? We're all in the same boat together.
right.
But yeah, I've been doing it for about a decade, like you mentioned. I've been a publisher owner for about seven of those.
Right. Nice. So, guys, just to let you guys know, make sure you get your comments and questions in ASAP. We only have Javi here for about the next 25 minutes. So we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, but we're going to jump into some recruiting stuff just to kind of get started. I wanted to kind of, right before we get to recruiting, I know my audience is going to kill me for this, but right before we get into recruiting, what is your overall perspective of how UTSA season went last year? There was the reason I ask you that question is because here on this channel, we go every week, sometimes multiple times a week, and we kind of talk about how we're feeling about the team, what's going on, who's doing good, who's doing bad, or recruiting, are we recruiting well or not? I wanted to hear from you. How do you think last season went? And do you think it was an overall success?
It's tough. It's tough because there's the last 2 years before that have been such a it's hard to beat a conference championship, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think given the circumstances and everything that went through injuries, all that stuff that happened with Frank and his knee, with JT Clark and not being able to play, the fact that they made it to the pseudo semifinal game, right, with Tulane, with the chance to go to the championship, I think you have to see the season as a success, especially with the Bowen. Now, if the Bowen wouldn't have happened, I think maybe there's an argument to be made that, man, a little bit underachieving. But getting to that Tulane game with everything on the line in my mind, was the expectation for this team. Especially now knowing everything that transpired with injuries, right? And
Right.
then winning that bowl game, I think puts it as a successful season. Me personally, I am glad fans are to the point where they are demanding a championship game or
Right.
bust. I think that
Yep.
that's good. I think that means that the expectation has been raised. But I think getting to that Tulane game with everything on the line, you have to deem it a success.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your perspective there. I feel like there was a huge, and I know UTSA Twitter is always popping, but there was a huge side of UTSA Twitter that I constantly talk about, that felt like this season was not up to par because we weren't competing for AAC championship in Frank's last year. In my opinion, yeah, that would have been great, but I feel like that bowl game and us winning the bowl game. And I understand bowls are not as prestigious as they used to
Yeah.
be, but considering that we have not gotten over that hump as a program, I feel like this was a successful season because we were finally able to get over that, right? So,
Yeah. And
yeah,
and
no,
I think just
mhm,
to kind of to piggyback on that, I mean, I think the Tulane games was a great barometer. Um,
right,
I think for me, the thing that stood out the most was the offensive and defensive lines there, right? Like they were just better, right, on the
yeah,
trenches,
yeah,
and
100%.
coming from as a Conference USA program, I think that's where you saw the difference, and I think that's why as we kind of head into the recruiting side of it, um, what you see that being addressed this offseason is man, when they went up against the best, they kind of faulted it on the lines, right, on the
Right,
offensive defensive line side, and I think that's due because it's a Conference USA team essentially competing in the American,
right,
and that's why I kind of like the perspective is important here because I think once you have a couple, I mean, even after this class, but after a couple recruiting classes, when they're able to recruit to the American with the American TV money kind of coming in now,
mhm,
um, I think the expectation should be to be in that game over like year over year. But I think
right.
the fact that they were able to do it with essentially a Conference USA roster, some credit has to be due there.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a great segue into the recruiting side of things. Based on the recruits that we got, I am very big on, and this is just my, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, but here's just my perspective on just recruiting and how people judge classes, right? Like recruiting classes. I am not too huge on what star somebody was, because at the end of the day, 4, 5, 3, 2, 1 star, they have to go into a college program coming from high school, and they have to be able to prove that they're better than the guys that are already there to get on the field. So 5 stars can become 2 stars very quick when you step on a college campus. But so my perspective is generally, hey, did we fill the gaps that we needed to fill? We got a Rashad Wisdoms that's leaving. Like, are we do we have someone that can come in and play that dog safety role, and then also go back up top and be able to cover deep. So from your perspective though, I know you're a lot closer to the recruiting and the recruits that we have. What do you think of UTSA's recruiting class, from your perspective?
I could see why some of the criticism has come up this cycle, just in terms of
Right,
numbers you're right, the star factor.
right,
Um, but I think you put it perfectly right is Jeff Traylor has said over and over again he is a fit guy, right? The
right,
players have to fit his culture and the program. Um, they say they don't look at stars, they do, whether they want to admit it or
right,
not. But I think a fit is also very important, right? So with this class in particular, I think, like I mentioned, they started addressing some needs on the high school side and then the portal as well, on the offensive line and defensive line. Um, the numbers are not going to be there like a South Florida or
right,
I don't even want to compare SMU anymore because they're like at another level. But um, with the upper echelon, right? If UTSA had wanted to, they could take the numbers to get that and bump up the ratings, if
right,
you will. But they are purposely being slow about it, right? They know that they're being selective on the high school ranks. They're being selective on the transfer side, even though that's not to say they haven't lost on a couple guys because they have. But they're
right,
being selective into who they want because they know, especially with the portal, that guys are going to transfer. They know that they're going to have another shot of those guys that they recruited 2, 3 years
Right.
ago.
Right.
They're going to be in the portal, so they want to give themselves the room to possibly recruit a DJ Allen, a JJ Sparkman, right, on a wide receiver. Or you can take a perfect example. You can be like UNT and load up in December, but now maybe you don't give yourself the flexibility in the summer, spring time when there's more transfers and for needs, right? Because what's essentially going to happen here is that they're going to go into spring, they're going to do their spring thing, and then they're going to assess their roster one more time. And so is everybody else. There's going to be transfer naturally, right? Because the depth chart starts getting figured out
Right.
all over the country.
Yeah.
Guys are going to transfer. Well, now UTSA has the room to go after positions of need because somebody didn't work out or they fill a need linebacker or safety wherever it might be. But now they have the room. So
Right.
there's a reason to it. Again, that's not to say they haven't lost out on recruits because they have, but I don't think it's as dire as it seems.
Okay. So, is there a player or two maybe that you look at that recruiting class and you're like, you know what, this guy, and I know we have a couple of guys. We got a guy from Bama, TCU, Tech. They're probably the obvious answers, but are there anybody else in that class that you say, you know what, this guy may come in and get some time pretty early based on what's left UTSA, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think Kenyon Kelly, the safety out of Denison, Texas, just because of need, right? With Wisdom
Yep.
graduating,
Right.
there's going to be a need at safety. So I think that's somebody who could get early playing time. Somebody under the radar is maybe like a Zechariah Robinson
Mm,
on the high school side, on a defensive lineman. You're not going to find a lot of info on him. He's very quiet
right.
on social media, but I've heard good things about him in terms of a guy that could probably contribute early. But he's going to be buried there a little bit. So maybe he's a type that takes like a redshirt year, kind of like or he can be like a Ty Leonard type, where you do see him like 4 games, and then you see him kind of further down the line. But I think those two stick out to me pretty quick.
Okay, I'll definitely keep an eye on both of those because they hadn't come up. I don't think JJ brought those two up, so I'll definitely keep an eye on both of those. In terms of our recruiting class, how did we fare, in your opinion, to the rest of the conference? I know there's just been a lot of talk about stars and a level and these rankings of where UTSA falls in terms of like our recruiting class. Whenever you look at the entire AAC and the guys that they've brought in, do you think UTSA is sort of in the bottom half or in the top half of recruiting the way or bringing in the guys that UTSA needs, not necessarily from a star standpoint?
Yeah. So again, this is a perfect example of the numbers thing, right? So if using the way Rivals ranks them, UTSA right now is 11th if you combine transfers in high school. But if you were to look at the average star ranking, if you will, or whatever the term is per site, and I'm not too familiar with 24/7 and where they're ranked right now, but for example, for Rivals UTSA, if you average it out, they're third in terms of stars and their
Okay.
actual
Ooh,
rating. So again, it's not a numbers thing. If UTSA had more numbers like everybody else, obviously that gets inflated. But if you
right.
go by the average rating, and I'm sure if you go to On3 and 24/7, you'll notice that the same pattern is that the average rating per recruit is actually pretty high in like top three, top five in the conference.
So
So
wait,
that's again,
can I cut you off really quick?
yeah.
So UTSA's so whenever you look, so when you say average rating, you're talking about the star rating of a player. We're actually third in the conference.
Correct. Let me give you an exact number. So number one right now is South Florida. Number two is Tulane, which that checks out, and then number three with the 2.6, meaning out of three, right? Out of three
Right.
for
Right.
rivals as they do out of a 3-star rating, they're at 2.6, so they're third right now, but they're right behind Tulane and South Florida. So depending on who they get next week, that could get bumped up pretty quick.
Wow. So I actually thought that UTSA was amongst the bottom in that.
They are if you the way that rivals rates them by the numbers, right? Depending on the number you have, multiplied by the star rating gives you a score.
I see.
But
Okay.
again, that's because, for example, South Florida has 33 commits total between
I
high
see.
school and transfer. Memphis 43, North Texas 40. UTSA is at 20. So I mean, it's half essentially.
I see
But
what you're
if you were to
saying.
take the star rating, they're actually top five, and in this case, third.
Wow.
So
Wow.
again, just kind of how you see the data and how you want to interpret it.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things that we've talked about a lot on this channel, and I'm sure once we get to the questions from the audience, we'll get into some of that as well. But quarterback, I think this is just my personal opinion, and I think a lot of the folks who are watching now are, sort of feel the same way. I feel like we need to bring in a vet quarterback. Not to say, I mean, maybe they win the job, maybe they won't, right? But like, I think Eddie Lee Marburger and I think Owen McCown, they would benefit from having someone there that's experienced, that's going to at least push them. It's going to at least push them from a starting job. I want them to go out there and earn a job with someone else in that quarterback room that is, valuable enough to be considered for a starting quarterback job. Do you think we haven't gotten a quarterback yet, but do you think that UTSA would potentially look at that when the spring transfer portal opens up for a couple of weeks, or are
Yeah,
we basically done?
no, I think UTSA is done for now. I think they missed out on a couple of the targets that they were looking for the spring session, but
Right.
I think they're gonna move on. So I think what's gonna happen here is they're gonna go into the spring with Eddie Lee and with and McCown, and see where they're at. And the other ones are there's Gilkey and all the other Brandon Tennyson that are there as well. I think after spring they're gonna assess where they're at, and more than likely the decision is going to be made that they're going to look for a veteran quarterback. There's going to be some more transfers, right, as everybody else has their spring, and
Right.
there's going to be some vet quarterbacks out there. But I think you're right. They are. I think Jeff Traylor voiced it, and it's probably going to happen where they're going to want to bring in somebody with a little bit more experience um, to push them to see where they're out with that, and I think they're going to bring somebody. It's to be determined who the targets are going to be at this point. Not that that everybody kind of has found a home for now, but who knows what's going to happen in a couple months.
Absolutely. So, right. So I want to, for these last 10 minutes, I want to go to the audience. I know they filled up the comment section, and guys, keep filling it up. We still got about 11 minutes with Javi here to answer some questions. I want to definitely transition into that if we can here. Before we get into that, guys, be sure to smash a like on the video here. It is going to help out the channel and help build a community. And if you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But let's get going on some of these questions. We'll move into the Q&A section of this now over this last 10 minutes. My man Jamie says, hello, Jamie. He says, not trying to jump the gun, but I can put this on the screen. I got to continue to remember that. Not trying to jump the gun, but I would not be surprised if we had a better season than last year. This culture is the real deal. Javi, I'll let you go at that one first. Based on the recruits that we got coming in and based on your purview of next year, I know it's super early, but what are your takes on what we'll look at, what we'll look like next year?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to depend a lot on the in this off season and who they're able to bring in. But I could see it. I think the out of conference schedule is much friendlier than it has been in years past, so they can definitely get out of there with a positive record. I think it's all going to depend on the quarterback, right? I think at the other positions there's good depth, right? Especially with Oscar Cardenas coming back now, Joe Evans is coming back, Dawan Griffin, right? There's good depth at a lot of positions, even with some guys leaving. And I think I had a tweet about it earlier this week where there's good depth, right? There's some good players leaving. Frank Harris, or Wisdom, and others are leaving, but there's guys coming back, and the important thing at this level is depth, and I think they have it. It's just a matter of trying to figure out the most important position, right? If they can work that out, and Owen or Eddie Lee or whoever they bring in is that guy, then I think yeah, I could see another maybe 9-10 win season, and then with another shot in a championship and a good bowl game.
I sure as hell hope so. Um, Ernesto says JJ thinks the recruiting class is not as good. What do you think? Development is just as important. So I don't necessarily want to pit you versus JJ here about what the recruiting class is. Everybody has their own opinion here, but um, I think you've talked about what you think of the recruiting class. But talk to me about the development of some players and some of the young players that are on the team and what you expect from them coming into next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think development is just as important as the recruiting side, right? I think people forget that JT Clark, Sakari Franklin, Josh Cephas, they were all two-star recruits. They were not, they were not these 3, 4-star guys that UTC is getting now. They were 3-star guys or high 2 stars. So yeah, I think development just as important. A guy like Owen Pee Wee, for example, he's shown flashes. He was a high 3-star guy, a mid 3-star guy. So there's a good a bad example, I guess. But a guy that with the right development can be one of the next stars of the defense. And there's guys all over. Houston Thomas at tight end, right? Devin McEwen. We kind of see what he was able to do, like now with more snaps, right? So I think it's going to be vital for this program to keep succeeding without the vets, without development. If that doesn't happen, I think UTSA will struggle. Kind of going back to the last question, but I think Trailer has a relatively good record with development, so there's a good trend. There's going to be some more money invested into the program, so I would think that would lead to better development. And I think with the culture that he has instilled, it's going to do well. I think they've been done a good job on the development front.
Let me ask you a question about this, and I know this is not a question that the fan that I said fans, they're not fans, they're supporters and viewers. But in terms of this is sort of different from what they're asking here, but I want to know from your perspective. I had April on last week, who she's a donor, she's a notable donor
Mhm.
at UTSA, and she kind of talked a lot about what NIL has done for college football and how it's impacted recruiting. Um, how, like, for you who was operating rivals and looking at guys who commit and so on and so forth, like from your perspective, what is the impact like? How does that how do you work that into your equation whenever you're trying to figure out where these guys are going to commit or where they're not going to commit, or if UTSA is going to be able to even be in a race for certain guys?
Yeah, no, it has to be considered, right? If you don't consider it or you don't take it into account, I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
Right.
Because it's a fact at this point, right? It's not something you could be ignored. I think it plays a vital part into recruiting classes, into team building. It's just a fact of what where college football is now, whether we like it or not. It is what it is, right, at this point. And I think overall, it's a positive for the players. So it matters, and I'm glad people like April and everybody else have taken up that mantle for the fan base, because it's an important part. Without that infrastructure, we've seen other programs struggle. I think UTSA is lucky to have those groups and those people that have dedicated their time, right, out of something that is not it's not required of them, but they've done it, and
Right.
they've gone out there and fundraised and put their own time and effort into it. And I think that kind of just tells you the commitment from not just the administration but the fan base, that they're willing to support them in other avenues, right? Because they can be donating just like other people do, but they go above and beyond and do the NIL side as well, which is just as important.
Over to this one, David. I seen your question, but I feel like we've answered that one already, just based on our discussion today. Uh, Kermit says, "What are your thoughts about the new defensive pass coordinator and the special teams coordinator?"
I think it's great. Coach Scott is going to be taking over the defensive passive coordinator spot, so it's a need. He comes well regarded from ULL, from Louisiana
Yep.
Lafayette.
Mhm.
He's a good recruiter from everything that I've heard, and he's going to be a plus. He's going to be a plus recruiter, a plus coach, and it's a position that is needed. It's a, I guess you could say, like a pseudo defensive coordinator, kind of like on the offensive side. There's a running game, I think, running game coordinator as well, or there has been in the past. So on the special team side, that's one of the things that I think when you don't have it, you're like, oh man, we should have a special teams coordinator, right? If you're a program. So I think it's an important thing to have. I mean, we owe a bunch of us watch college football, right? And we see how
Right.
important special teams are. I think to have a coordinator just kind of emphasizes that importance. There's a lot of games and won and lost because of special teams, right? And that's kind of what the coaches always tell you, right? Like offense, defense, special teams. I think that was Coach Coker's famous lines, right? Offense, defense, special teams.
Nice.
And could be because it matters. Because it matters, and I'm glad they addressed that this offseason.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, definitely that was one of Coach Koger's things. He put starters
I
on the
remember.
field.
I remember in the press conferences, man, he would always like offense, defense, special teams.
Absolutely. Um, I'm always going to ask this question when it comes up, but any news on the indoor facility or what they call what do they call the covered pavilion? Any news
Covered
on that?
pavilion. Yeah, I've heard so many like variants of what they're
Right.
gonna call this thing. I think it's getting closer. I don't have any
Okay.
news to report or anything, but I think the light is at the end of the tunnel on that front. I think it's coming. They don't want to give out dates just yet, which is perfectly fine. But it's coming. I wouldn't be shocked if in the next wouldn't be honestly it wouldn't shock me if in the next like 6 months we heard something about it.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be shocked in the next year or so. There's something concrete.
Yeah, I think the weird thing about that, April talked about this on our last show, but I think the weird thing about that is um actually she did not. Someone else talked to me about it, and I don't think I can share that right now. So
that,
almost I'll just
that's where it is right now. That's
yeah,
where it
I'll
is. You
just
hear rumblings and things, but you can't just quite.
I don't want to. So I did. So just for the audience, so April did not tell me this. Just to be very, very clear, April did not tell me this, but it was something I was thinking about when April was on. I have talked to some folks very close to the program, and the indoor or covered pavilion price has went up exponentially over the last year. Um, and I have numbers on those, but I don't want to share those because I don't want to expose anyone who knows. So yeah, I'll move on. I'll move on here. Let's see. David says, "Are we getting AAC TV / media money now, or if not, till when? Do you
So I
have
think
any
this one's.
information on that?"
Yeah, so this one's tricky because this was before SMU decided to leave.
Okay.
So I don't know now if in my mind I haven't gotten anything concrete, but in my mind those timelines get moved up because UTSA and the rest of the Conference USA teams that moved up were on a partial uh, not contract but allocation of money, I guess, as they were moving up and transitioning into the American. With SMU leaving, I would think my assumption, my safe assumption would be that that would get tweaked a little bit with exit fees and that money coming in. So I would think that that timeline to get a full share of the revenue would get shortened significantly. So I mean, I would say very soon. They should be there very soon.
I hope so. I'll
Yeah,
say that
it's big.
again.
It's
Yeah,
big.
it'll be big.
And it's
Um,
something people I tell it's something that a lot of people don't factor is that TV money. Because they're like, oh, we're the American and we have bigger budgets. It's like, well, but remember that they're not getting the full share just yet. Hopefully soon.
right. Cool. I'll leave you with this last question because I know it's at 6 o'clock. And guys, I'm gonna stay on for a little bit after this. So drop your comments as we continue this. But I know Javi's about to jump off here in a second, but I want to leave him with one last question
I
that we
I,
have.
I will say I do owe you another 30 minutes though. I will like gladly come
Of
back for
course.
another session
Of
if you'll have me.
Of course, absolutely. One question that we have with you, I look there's a few more questions, but I think I want to come back to this one because it's probably the most relevant. Let's see. It's Kermit again. He says, "What position do you think they will target next? Now that they have field O line and receiver pretty well, based on the recruits that we have outside of quarterback. Who do you think we're targeting? What position do you think we're targeting now?"
I think they're going to go look at some safeties and quarterbacks. Honestly, I think with Cam Alexander leaving, with Rashad Wisdom leaving, they need some help back there. Probably two. I would say maybe one or two safeties, one or two cornerbacks. I would say maybe not something that gets addressed next week, but something that they're going to look for summer. Aside from that, they're always on the lookout for another offensive lineman. I think they offered a transfer from Colorado this week that they had previously recruited. Um, I've seen a couple offers out to running backs, which I found interesting. Got to dig in there a little bit
Really?
more. Yeah, that I'll leave you. I'll leave you all that one with to ponder a little bit. But Yeah, that one I got to do some more research on as to why I've seen a couple of running back offers. But I think wide receiver they're good. Linebacker maybe, but I think they got some good help there with the guys that got coming in. And you're always looking for talent at this point, right? Once you have your positions filled, I think you go looking for best available. Once you address your needs, if a 3 4 star guy that you're confident in that you've had a relationship with calls you after they hit the transfer portal, then they're going to be there to listen because again they give themselves the flexibility to be able to have those conversations when guys transfer because they didn't take as many in the December period.
Right. Cool. Well, listen, Javi, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you for coming on. We will definitely get that 30 minutes back at some point in the
Yes,
future.
I promise. Anytime, just let me know.
And hopefully more than that as we go on this journey. But yeah, thank you for coming on. I think we got through majority of the questions that we had, especially in the audience. Those are the ones that count the most. Guys, actually, I'll give you the floor here. Javi, where can everyone find you? And where can we find your content, your work, and things like that?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on social media at Rivals Hobby, and then always follow the side account, which is at UTSA Rivals. You'll find all our content there. Stephen, Brennan, Julio, Bert, Chase, all those guys, Alonso, they all do a fantastic job. The site would not be where it's at without them. So, yeah, that's where you can find us.
Awesome sauce. Well, appreciate you for being here, Javi. We are going to continue the show minus Javi, but this was excellent. We have a lot to talk about. See you, buddy. We have a lot to talk about with Javi leaving here. Let's see. I can't answer any of these other questions that you guys have because I'm sure they were directed at Javi, but definitely fill that comment section up if you have additional questions. I haven't had a time, I haven't had time, honestly, to talk to you guys solo. Um, just because we've been having guests on, and I really want to hear from you guys on. Do you think guests are good? Should I do 2 shows that week if I do have a guest on, so on and so forth? I want to give you guys access to some of the folks that are close to all of the UTSA football things. I'm talking to people constantly, just trying to get every bit of information that I can get about what UTSA is going through, what the situation is, so on and so forth. And I want to not expose is the wrong word because that makes it seem like I'm telling things that I'm not supposed to tell, but I want to be able to, you know, pull back the curtain as much as I possibly can with some of these discussions and some of these talks. So yeah, I would like to keep having guests on. Guys, I am working on having Frank Harris on. I know he came out with his big announcement with being the VP of City Fans 210. I believe that's what it's called. I am working on that. I am trying to get that in. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. Not going to make any promises. Before that, I'm likely going to have some more folks from these NIL collectors to come in and talk. I think they're really interested in talking to folks right now because, to be honest, they want your dollars. And this is not. I don't think it's in a malicious way. They want folks to help the program so we can keep players. I think that's the big part. Everybody I've been talking to lately, they've been talking about ensuring that we can be able to retain players. And I think that retention is going to come with, folks donating, and it may be $2, $3, $4, $5 a month, but those things are super, super important. So I won't go too long if we don't have any questions or comments. I think I might do the next one solo just to kind of bring back some normalcy to the show because I have had 3 folks on the show back to back to back. But I feel like it was necessary. These are good people that's around the program and they play in very, very valuable roles in UTSA coverage, NIL stuff, so on and so forth. So I'll look through some of the comments. Ernesto says, Is Robert or Kavorian leaving or Rocco? Listen, I'll tell you this. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. You have a three-headed monster, and I'm sure all three of those guys want to be number one. I wouldn't be surprised if you lose at least one. I don't think you're going to lose Robert because, in my opinion, he's probably your starter coming back. Kavorian is going to be right there with him. Rocco, I worry about. I think he could go somewhere else and he can go somewhere else and get some things figured out. But who knows? Running backs these days and the way they're viewed is a lot different than it used to be. So we'll see about that. David says, "What are your plans for during the season? Do you plan on coming out to some games and maybe some media access on field stuff?" Yeah. So David, I used to do the on field stuff pretty tough. I do have media credentials. I am close to. I used to intern for the UTSA media folks, so media credentials and coming to the games and stuff like that is stuff that Nick and I used to do. Remember, if you don't remember back in the day, we used to have Nick used to actually go to the press conferences and interview the coaches, whether if it was Wilson or if it was Trailer. Nick used to be there doing that. I was mostly in charge of some of the in-game, and Nick did this as well, but some of the in-game tweets, especially about some of the technicalities of what we've seen on certain plays when I was in the press box. So I don't know if I necessarily want to do that anymore because I think I'm more valuable here. To be honest, I do want to. So I will definitely be at some games, but I am honestly thinking about, and this is only if you guys will like it. I am thinking about doing a watch along. When I'm watching the game, I'm watching the game on YouTube. I know people complain so much about the commentary. I am thinking about doing a watch along uh, during the game. I'd basically sort of replace your commentary. That's one of the plans that I have. That's a big commitment because that means I'll be sitting in front of a screen for 3 hours and I'd be on camera for 3 hours. So that's a huge commitment for me. But I am trying to make plans to be available for that. But it'd be very interesting to see what you guys think about it. So if there's not a big enough crowd here that would be interested in that, I won't do it, but if there's enough demand for it, I will do it because I want to. But I just want to be able to do that. And I know a lot of you guys will be at the game, but I don't live in San Antonio anymore, so it's not just a hop, skip, and jump for me as it used to be, right? So, listen, if people will be there and they'll watch, I will 100% do that. But yeah, I do have some plans about the upcoming season. I think I certainly want to add some folks to the team to go cover the game specifically, but I want to be able to pay those folks, and I am trying to figure out ways to be able to do that. So more to come on some of that stuff, but I definitely have huge plans for the season. I definitely want to expand if I can. David also says, "I'm glad to see the growth you've had. Always looking forward to watching these. Thanks, man. I really appreciate these little comments and these things like this. You guys don't know how much it keeps me pumping. I really, really appreciate you for that." Do you think Rocco will just decide to stay? What I've seen, he seems to enjoy the city and life here, but not sure. Listen, I think that he's in a good position. He gets good game time. He's a part of a three-headed monster. I understand it's not the perfect situation, but he is a huge beneficiary of that, and he produces. I think it comes down to that. As long as he can produce, he can be great, and he's going to get more touches. And I think that, listen, I wasn't thinking about this as much until I talked to JJ, and JJ said, "Hey, look, Robert Henry might come in as a starter at running back." And if you think about it, Rocco Griffin might be behind him. Kaforian might be third. I'm not as much worried about Rocco and Robert Henry. I'm more so worried about Kavorian Barnes, who I think is a stud. So that I don't know. That situation is weird. Jared says, who gets the privilege to wear 210 digits this season? Great question. Great question. I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. Oh my gosh. I wish I could do a poll. I don't think we have enough people yet to do a poll, but I'm gonna keep that one in mind, Jared. Oh, what a great question, dude. I have no idea. Well, let's be so I do have some idea, but like I don't know how things are gonna shake out. So I don't want to like put myself out there yet. But man, those 210 digits next year, I'm sure it's gonna be the 210 is gonna be one of the quarterbacks. Whoever wins the quarterback position will get one of the one of the 210 digits. But everybody else, I don't know. I don't know who's a lock. Maybe Jamal Liggins a lock? Could he be a lock? But does he even want the number? Right? I don't know if you could do the run on the running backs. Maybe listen, I'll tell you this. Oscar, Big Oscar can definitely be a lock. If JT Clark comes back, if he wants it, he could be a lock. Outside of that, it's gonna be a crapshoot. It'll be a crapshoot. Great question. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I've had a cough today. I've been using the mute button quite a bit. Let's see. David says, would you possibly look into covering more UTSA sports, or are you looking to solely cover UTSA football for now? Great question here. Listen, UTSA football is what I'm an expert at football. I want to be very clear about. I want to be clear about that. Like, I'm a student of the game. Um, Guys, I know football like the back of my hands. I'll just be very, very clear about that. There is I understand the sport in a way that most people don't. And I still to this day study the sport probably obsessively. And I like that I can provide my perspective to everyone who takes the time to watch. I like that I can provide my perspective there and give you something valuable, right? Because I don't know if there's a lot of folks who put in the time to study football and watch the game as much as I've put in and as much as I've truly still put in. I like covering UTSA football, and that's what I'm committed to. In terms of the other sports, I think Alamo Audible does a good job at covering all bases. They have multiple people to do that. I am not. I don't care to put myself in a position to where I'm just talking about UTSA basketball like I just have history and I have a huge point of knowledge. I don't want to waste you guys' time. I know from a football perspective, I know that like the back of my hand, and I'm still a student of the game, and I still know it. Like I still have an astute opinion on what's going on, and I have a perspective that is valuable to listeners and people who watch the show. So I'm going to stick to football. I am going to on my YouTube channel anyway, and I hope you guys continue to watch, talk about other things as well, but that are like things that I feel comfortable talking about on the show because also do some MMA stuff. I do NFL stuff like that. I hope you guys stick around and watch some of that. I am going to cover some Spurs going forward. I'm trying to work with some of the San Antonio sites or whatever to get more attached to some of them. They're not showing me any love right now, and it's cool, but I'm trying to reach them. So if you guys got any shouts that you can give me, let me know. So I do know my basketball. I don't get to watch as much UTSA basketball. I'm not as familiar with it. If there's a huge demand to it, I will. But right now, football is the most important thing to me because I think I can offer something unique to the audience, and I think that's what you guys value. So I'll stay there. I'm gonna wrap up here in a second. We got Jared says QB2 Clark minus QB -2, Clark -1, Oscar -0. I don't understand this one. Sorry, Jared. I don't get this one here, brother. Maybe I missed something. We'll go to your next one. Danye, Ligon, and question or my prediction on defense. Yeah, could be. Could be. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that at all. 100%. Don't disagree. Um. Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. Two for. Okay, I see. Two for. Okay. Two for the quarterback. Clark for 1. Oscar at 0. I love it. I love that actually. That'd be great. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially since Frank is not there to be 0 anymore. I think having that quarterback having a different number is great too. Two is a good quarterback number. If whatever quarterback can pull out their inner college football Johnny Manziel, that would be great. But yeah, thank you guys for being here, man. There's a lot of stuff that's coming up that I'm going to ask a lot of you guys in terms of being members and stuff like that. You guys have helped me tremendously over these past few months, and I am truly grateful for it. But I want to be able to give you guys the best product and the best entertainment as possible, and I am committed to doing that. Um, there's going to be some things that's coming up in terms of memberships and things like that. I think after this video, I should be able to be a YouTube partner, so you'll see a little bit of some different stuff that comes there. But I also want to add to the team, and I want to create a team of folks who are able to cover, UTSA as good as possible because I think we deserve it. Number one, and I think that this school is going to be one of the biggest. And in my opinion, why not put us in a position to have the best coverage as possible and to also uh, grab as much attention as possible? So I will always oh gosh, I will always ask you guys to like the video, subscribe to the channel, but also tell your other UTSA supporters and your friends to like and subscribe. I'm telling you now, this community right here, we're going to build something big, and it's going to be something that's valuable, and it's going to come with your subscriptions. It's going to come with your word and things like this. There's a lot that I have to do. I want to get into the donation space to make sure we in this community are also part of this NIL movement and also a part of making sure the players are paid. I want to put all of the things we talked about in action. I am that kind of person. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on all year, and I will really appreciate your support, and I will really appreciate you guys sharing this with your friends and folks around the city to make sure we can get that ball moving. Cool. So with that being said, I am going to close out for the night, but I really appreciate everyone who stayed with me. Shout out to Javi for coming on and being a guest. I will have a video probably solo at the end of the week, but we will definitely be back next week. I am going to intentionally not have a guest so we can do the thing like we do normal, and then we will go from there. Appreciate you guys for watching, and I will see you soon. Peace.